Hey friends, welcome back to 30 Flirty and Nerdy. Today I have a very special guest, Cory Rusin. Cory and I have been following each other on social media for how many years would you say? Quite a while
It's
now.
like 3,
3? Okay. I thought it might have
maybe
been 4. A long time.
a long time.
So I've seen Cory through different phases of your evolution to like doing online selling to online different paths and things like that. And now you have your very own business where you help people kind of find or develop their purpose, which I think is really cool and really unique. And it's just something that I think a lot of people are missing in their lives. And having you on to like talk about that and how you were able to find your purpose and kind of give examples will really help a lot of people realize what purpose actually is. And so I wanted to ask you if you could give a little bit of background on your kind of like expertise on purpose and just kind of your studies and things like that and all of that type of information because I don't have your bio yet, but
Absolutely. So I am currently studying purpose in life for my dissertation. I'm getting my PhD in community research and action, which is an interdisciplinary program that's focused on solving the world's really tough problems. Essentially, the program is like, we need to help solve these wicked problems in the world. How are we going to help create the next leaders of tomorrow? That's like this, not the slogan of the university, but that's kind of what it is. And so I've had the pleasure of being able to work with people who have backgrounds in public administration, and my background's in psychology. But people, I mean, we've had dentists in the program. It's people who are really devoted to making a positive difference in the world. And so I didn't start my program studying purpose. I didn't know that I was going to be studying purpose in life. And I can fill in the blanks there, but I have kind of grown into studying purpose in life. So right now I'm looking at the relationship between education, purpose in life, and stress reactivity. And so that'll be my dissertation. So I am like knee deep in purpose literature and the study of purpose, which dates back only to like 1959. I know we have philosophers who have talked about it for centuries, but the actual like empirical study of purpose is very new. And so that's kind of my background as far as like purpose related research goes. And that informs a lot of what I do with my clients is the research and what people are finding helps to develop purpose, because I do look at it as something that's developed, not found, like we kind of hear all the time. And I also am a trauma informed coach. So I went through trauma informed training earlier this year and really come from that lens and being able to coach people into developing their purpose and figuring out what their gifts, their talents, and their strengths are. And oftentimes they're coming to me because they want to start a new career path or trying to figure out what would most make them feel fulfilled and like their life has a meaning every day. And we all want a reason to wake up in the morning. And so that's a lot of how I do what I do, is from those two different lenses and taking, I mean, I pull from all different things. I have a yoga certification, so I pull things from my yoga teacher training. I have a bachelor's and master's in psychology, so I pull things from that. And so a lot of what I do is bringing different tools together to best support my clients.
that's amazing. You're like you said, you're bringing everything that you learn and turning it into you, turning it into Cory, turning it into what you want to teach people. And so you kind of mentioned that we've been told, throughout centuries that we have to find our purpose, but you see it as defining your purpose and like building your purpose. So can you go a little bit deeper into that and like how you define purpose in yourself too, and like how you define
Yeah,
purpose for your clients?
absolutely. So in the actual literature around purpose and in the research, what has been found is that purpose isn't something that we find. It's not something we just like trip over and we're like, oh my gosh, this is what my purpose is. There are a couple different pathways that you can develop purpose. But I look at it as something that you develop or cultivate, something that even like a garden, like you're cultivating something, helping it grow. And if we don't do that with purpose, it's something that doesn't exist. We have to develop it. And so there are lots of things, there's lots of literature on like developing youth purpose, but I think a lot of that stuff can be transferred over to adults because we're not taught how to do this in school. It would be great if it was, but we're not at that point yet. Purpose as defined, and there's a couple different definitions within the academic research, but the definition that I abide by and the way that I think about purpose is that purpose is a self-organizing life aim that dictates your goals and your behaviors. So it is this, you can think of it like a GPS. Like purpose isn't the destination that you're moving towards, it's the thing that's guiding you along the path of your life. And it's dictating the choices that you make. Like the GPS is kind of telling you, okay, you want to take a right turn here, not a left turn. And so when we have developed this life aim that is kind of dictating what we do, it's like, okay, is this aligned with the goals that I have for myself? Is this aligned with what I feel my purpose is? Or is it not? And that helps to determine new, smaller goals for ourselves. It helps us determine our choices that we make on a daily basis. And so that's the way I look at it, rather than being this big, like, it's overwhelming to think of it as this, like, oh my gosh, this is the culminating thing of my life. It's like, no, this is the thing that dictates the other choices that you make throughout your life and also adds meaning and fulfillment to your life.
Okay, and so developing purpose, like how would that look for someone? Say like, would someone be like, oh, I want to be, I don't know, an artist or a famous poet one day, and so they take steps leading up to that, and then that's kind of like their purpose? Is that kind of how you're explaining it in that sense? Does that make sense? Or like,
Yeah, no, that's a great
okay,
question.
thank
So
you.
yeah, so the way that you can think about purpose, so becoming like a famous artist or a famous musician or whatever it is, that would be a goal. Purpose, and usually they have it's like a finite thing. Like, I'm going to reach this thing and I'm going to like be the famous artist, and that's like the end goal. The purpose is usually something that is not finite. It's not something that can be accomplished. It's so maybe the purpose is that you want to impart a feeling or help communicate feelings in a way through your art. And that is the purpose. That's what dictates those goals. Like, you want to communicate in this way to other people through your art. So that goal of being a famous artist helps you do that at the largest scale. And so usually it's something like, even there's examples, because oftentimes we tie purpose to something that can end. And I think that's the real challenge. The research kind of shows that there is a dip in purpose in life, often at like midlife. And that's usually when kids graduate or a parent passes away. Maybe you're a caretaker, or you lose a job, or retirement. And when we've tied our purpose to that thing, our sense of purpose dips. And so the best way to kind of combat that is to tie your purpose to something that can't be an end to it. There can't be an end. It can't be finished. So like for myself, I feel a sense of purpose in helping others see their unique gifts, see their strengths. I take a lot of joy and fulfillment from helping people see a path for themselves that maybe they didn't see previously, or didn't see a way to reach the thing that they really wanted to do. And so chunking that down into bite-sized pieces. And so that I don't want to say it's small, but that purpose of feeling like I am here to help others see how valuable and incredible they are, then trickles out to not just career, but the way I interact with my partner, the way that I interact with you, the way that I interact with anybody, because that's guiding my choices and my goals. And so I have these other goals, but it can't go away. That piece of me can't go away. So I look at that as the purpose. and then the other pieces as goals.
That makes so much more sense. So you find within yourself a purpose, something that you enjoy and something that you love and something that you want to spread out into the world. And in order to do that, you have these little goals, like you were talking about, like goals with your partner, goals with your business, goals with people that you interact with on a day-to-day basis. That's making a lot more sense to me. So if there's someone listening to this and they're like, well, I don't know what I have a purpose in for myself. Like, I don't know what that purpose can be. What would be the first step for you to tell that person? Like to kind of look deeper and to kind of see like, you do have purpose within yourself. It's ABC. Like, how do you
Mhm.
explain that to someone who like completely lost it, doesn't know anything?
Yeah,
Does that make sense?
yeah, that makes sense.
Oh, good.
So what I would say is purpose is based on identity. It's you first asking the question, who am I? Because without who am I, we can't figure out what's that nugget, like the golden nugget of purpose. And I'll get back to your question in 1 second, but I have a really good example of that because I was working with a stay-at-home dad. He loved being with his kids and the ability to be with his kids, but he was reaching a point where he was wanting to branch out into the workforce, but he had never had like a solid career, hadn't had something that was what really defined him and made him excited and pushed him towards something. And he was struggling with that. And we did some of the identity work that I'll kind of share about just to kind of figure out like what are the things that excite you? What are the things that you're curious about? Because I think of the first stage of purpose as just curiosity. What sparks my interest? What strengths do I naturally have? And there's some tools that you can use to kind of figure out what some of those strengths are and have them reflected back to you because sometimes it's really hard to see what your strengths are without having them mirrored back to you in some way. Like we can look at other people and be like, oh, they're so good at that. They're so good at this, but it's hard to do that with ourselves. So having someone or something to mirror that back is really helpful. But in working with this client, we kind of realized that throughout the course of his life, he's always been the person that people went to have a good time. Like he was the person that like people would be like, oh, like what's the best restaurant to go to? Where do you have the most fun? Like, and he would make like board games for people to enjoy, like just for the fun of it, like intricate board games. And I was like, why
That's
didn't you tell me this?
amazing.
I know, right? I was like, one, that's an incredible skill. I have no idea how you do that. And two, like why didn't you tell me this before? Like, this is like insane. He had all of these unfinished board games in his closet that he had just created, like things for his kids or things for like a youth group. And he'd made all this stuff. And so
Wow.
he he's like, is that like even a thing that you can do? I'm like,
Yes.
yeah, yeah. And he ended up looking up one of the like major board game producers and creators was like in his backyard, like and they were looking for board game designers, people who like didn't need experience. They were just, we want creative
Oh,
people to
wow.
go do this. And
That's
so
so cool.
just, and he didn't necessarily pursue that job, but he's like, that tells me that when I'm ready to do that, there are things that are available to me that I can pursue that would fit into that strength. And that was like his purpose was to bring fun and joy to the people that were around him. And so that seems so simple, but I think people want to overcomplicate it. Like it doesn't need to be this grand thing, but then knowing that little nugget then allows you to create a life that you truly enjoy because you're dictating those goals based on that, and you're saying no to things that don't align with that little piece of you that's so important. And so for people who are trying to figure out like what am I excited about, start with what are you curious about. And it could be anything. Like maybe you're really interested in mythology, read some books. And I usually say like take a sheet of paper and like write down all the different ideas you have. And I don't want them to be like They could be out there, they could be, it doesn't matter what they are. Write down any ideas that you could possibly have of things that would sound fun or interesting. And then once you have that list, right next to it, one thing you could do tomorrow that would allow you to explore that avenue. And whichever one of those, like, do it for each one of them, and whichever one of those sounds most fun and most interesting, try it. Because I think one of the things we also get stuck on is feeling like we have to pick the right thing. It needs to be the right path, it needs to be the correct next move. And sometimes we aren't going to know what that is until we try it, until we experiment with it. And then if you have that list, if that one doesn't work out, you have a whole list of things to go back to and to get curious and try something new. But that's the only way that we figure things out, like, for sure, is by trying some of it and being okay with some of it not being that thing. Is that helpful?
Yes, no, and I'm like I'm getting a light bulb moment because when you were saying like try all the things, one of the biggest quotes that my mom would always tell me is like throw a lot of things at the wall and see which sticks, and then that's what you'll like gravitate towards and that's what you'll do. I don't remember exactly the quote of it, but I remember it's the same idea where it's like you have a lot of lists and like you want to try different things, and it's like in my own life, like I see, I tried blogging here and there and I'm like it's okay, like I still like I want to try it, but it's not something that lights me up. I went to school for like 3 different things. I started doing graphic design and I'm like, I don't like being graded for my art, so I'm just gonna like think of something else. And then I started doing jewelry design. And so with jewelry design, I'm like, oh, this is great, but it's like after a while it just kind of not lit me up. Like I still like to make jewelry for myself and things like that, but I don't sell it anymore. And then I found podcast management, which is what I do now, and I feel like that kind of finds a more of a purpose for me because it's like, oh, I'm helping people share their voice to the world. I'm helping people get their voice out there. So that's kind of like the purpose and the why of what I'm doing. So purpose is kind of like finding your why. Is that right? Like what you're talking about, kind of like finding your
Yeah,
curiosity, finding your why.
it's a guiding thing. And I think you
Yeah.
can call it a lot of different things, but
Mm.
it is your guidepost. It's the thing that you can look to and be like, is this goal or this opportunity something that aligns with what I'm really striving for in this life? And so that is really important in all the choices that we make, and really important to kind of pinpoint. And that doesn't mean it won't evolve or change throughout the course of your life. I know that for myself, I can now pinpoint, like look back and be like, oh, this theme has been in all of the things that I have done. Like, I've worked with college students on the autism spectrum. I've worked with students who are trying to re-enroll and come back into college. And I've helped to guide people to a goal or to the next chapter of their life. Basically, in everything that I've done, it just didn't always look the same. And so I think kind of looking back as well, of looking back on our experiences, looking back on your narrative around your life, what are the stories that you believe and tell about yourself? Looking back on those experiences, you can kind of find themes of different things you've been drawn to, even if they don't necessarily seem connected at the time. They are in some ways because they're the story of your life. So I think there are, and that's what I do with a lot of my clients, is like look back and see like, okay, what are the pieces that you enjoy about what you do now or what you've done in the past, and how can we find those themes in something new that's going to be more exciting and be more meaningful and fulfilling for you at this stage of your life. So the way that it looks can be very different through many stages of your life, but there is often a theme that kind of goes throughout, if that makes sense.
No, it does. It makes a lot of sense because it makes me wonder like why I specifically chose like podcasting. Like I'm just thinking like finding the purpose and things like that. And I think it's because I've been finding a theme of I was really quiet when I was younger. And then it's like growing up, I wanted to always talk and be part of conversations and things like that. I'm seeing that theme of like my voice like developing throughout my years. And it's like, oh, that makes sense. I'm finding like the purpose that I'm at right now is like that theme was always kind of there. So that definitely makes a lot more sense. And it's definitely something that I think a lot of people could benefit from because if they don't know where to start, it's like, well, what's been going on in your life? And I guess this wasn't a question that I had in mind, but it just kind of popped up. Would you say that like destiny connects to purpose, or is it just kind of like you create your own destiny? Does that make sense?
It's a great question.
Yeah.
It's definitely more philosophical than like it mixes my research brain wants to be like, I don't know. and so
I'm sorry, I kind of like joggled your brain a little bit there.
no, like it's a great question because I think it does tie into like philosophical things and like me personally as a human being and from like more of a spiritual standpoint, I guess I would say I think things happen for a reason, and that's not to I don't want to bypass some of that stuff. I like to be very like conscious of some of the more spiritual ways of speaking just because I don't want to say that you went through a horrible traumatic experience and everything just happens for a reason. I think that I can say a horrible experience that you went through isn't something that you should have gone through. Like I don't think there is any excuse for some of the things that so many of us have experienced. At the same time, when I'm thinking about like identity narrative, being able to articulate what happened to you and then be able to have your redemption story of how you move through it and being able to tell certain stories because our identity is based on the stories we believe and tell about ourselves. So if we can create a narrative that is empowering to us, that helps us develop our identity and helps us also develop purpose, because purpose is built upon our identity. And so I struggle with the balance between that a lot because I want to say, yeah, like things happen for a reason. We figure it out. We grow through them. We learn through them. And I don't think of anything really as a failure. It's just a learning experience. But I also have this other more trauma-informed lens that's like, but if we say everything happens for a reason and somebody goes through something absolutely horrendous, I don't, you know what I mean? Like, I have these two like ends of things that I want to believe in destiny and things falling into the right place and things working out because I've looked at my own life and there is some very shitty, awful, horrible things that I have lived through, and living through them guided me somewhere else and gave me a different way of viewing the world that I think is valuable and helpful to my clients and helpful to the people that I interact with on a daily basis. I also wouldn't wish them on anybody. So like I struggle. I think that's why that question hit me so hard, is like my internal brain is like battling between like my two ways of thinking, like my
I'm
research.
sorry.
Oh no, it's I like having that happen though. And I'm
Yeah.
not also as a researcher, like I'm not afraid to say, I don't know. I don't have a good answer. But that you just got to witness the internal battle that is my brain on a daily basis.
No, it was good to witness because I feel like a lot of people struggle with that too. So I think hearing it from someone whose main goal in business is to help people find purpose, and then the trauma aspect of it all, like what you said right there though, like I think people really resonate with that and can really like understand kind of a little bit what you're talking about there. Like, oh, like I can find kind of like the diamond in the rough of something traumatic that happened that I could flip it around and make it something different. So
Mhm.
I think what you said I totally understood, and I believe other people can understand that too.
Okay,
It was
good.
just no, it was good. I liked seeing kind of like your thought process of like both different sides. So I thought that was really unique.
Yeah, it is. It's interesting because I have to like I really balance between my really analytical research piece
Mhm.
and coming from data and looking at things from that perspective, but also like some of my tools are things that I have used with clients over and over and over again. They've been things that people have told me, wow, this is really helpful for me. This has been the most impactful piece. But I have no research and no real
Mhm.
way to be able to say this is why this tool works or why like human design I can't prove anything. I can't.
Mhm.
But I have used it with over 100 clients at this point, and I have not had a single person say that was unhelpful to me. And so I'll
Mhm.
keep using it. And it's so funny. Like I've had conversations with my own therapist, and I'm like, I don't know, like I use this tool. It's not research based. It's not evidence based. And she's like, does it work for your clients? I'm like, yeah. And she's like, well, we all have our own toolkit, and so we use what works. And so she's like, with mindfulness stuff there wasn't research that backed it before, and now it does. And so I struggle, I think, with that a lot of the time of like I got two different ways of thinking and sometimes they clash and they're like I don't have a good answer.
But it makes you think outside the box, which is really cool.
Yeah, yeah. I wish I appreciate sometimes, and sometimes I'm like my brain hurts.
Well, we have about 10 minutes left, so we can take a break with your brain.
Good.
Thank you for all your insight and wisdom and everything about purpose. I think, it's really helped me kind of see things through my own life, and I hope people start seeing it through their own life as well. And I would have to say, my last question for you tonight is, what advice would you give yourself in your young 20s as you are starting to enter in your 30s? Now, for my audience that's listening, Cory is almost 30. She's not 30 yet, but I just believe that what she teaches is so important for everyone because finding your purpose happens in every stage of your life. And I think this is perfect for the podcast. And so, being in your young 20s, looking into your 30s, I think that would be a fun question for Cory to answer.
Thank you. Yes.
Mhm.
So I am 29. I am almost there. Uh, what would I tell myself in my younger 20s? I would say you're going to figure it out, and then you're not going to figure it out, and then you're going to figure it out again. And it's going to be a cycle. And the things that you didn't think you'd make it through, you make it through just fine. And things are going to look very different than you anticipated them looking, but they are still going to be wonderful and challenging. And that's what life is. So enjoy it while you're going through it. Uh, I think that's what I tell myself. I think that's what I'm telling myself now too.
I love that because that's such good advice because you're right. Like everyone goes through changes all the time. There's things that people think, oh, this is what I want to do with my life. And it's like, oh, this is what I want to do with my life, like, you know, years later. So that advice was absolutely perfect. Thank you so much.
Yeah. You made me think of one thing too.
Mhm.
I just heard this quote. I'm gonna not say it totally correctly, but Morgan Harper Nicols is one of my favorite artists. And she did a reel recently that was I stopped asking myself, what am I going to do with my life? And started asking myself, what am I going to do in my life? And it took away the pressure of having to do something with my life and look at it from what are all the things that I can do within the confines of my life, which I loved. And obviously it has been sitting within me. So I just really loved that
Yeah.
perspective on it.
No, that's a great perspective on it. If you could find that quote, let me know and I could like put it in the resources too. because
Yeah.
I think people will love to see it, and I want to see it more as well, because that's a really good reminder that, life is always happening, kind of like live in the present almost, in a
Yeah.
way.
Yeah, and not put so much
Yeah.
pressure on there needing to be one
Yeah.
thing that you do, but a culmination of all of the wonderful things that you can do within this beautiful life that you have.
Right.
So I loved it.
Thank you for sharing that. I definitely want to put that like on a wall, like a quote wall or something.
Yep. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for being here and being on the podcast. And so for those that are listening, I will be putting all of Cory's information in the show notes and the resources and everything, so you go on the website and check that out if you want to dig deeper into your purpose. So again, thank you so much, Cory. I really appreciate you
Thank
being
you,
on here
Juliana.
today.
It's been wonderful. You're always a joy to speak to, so thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Hey friends, thank you for listening to today's episode. Please take a moment to follow and review this podcast so it could reach others. Also, if you leave a review, I'll be sharing your review in the next episode. Lastly, if you want to be part of this growing podcast to chat about your life, your profession, passions, or if you have advice that you wish you had at 30, please sign up at the link provided in the show notes. I would love to have you as a guest on the show. Thank you so much for listening, and I hope you have a wonderful day.